The Lexus IS lineup remains unchanged for a number of years, however, still stands out as one of the most searched Lexuses on the planet. So let's take a look at some previous videos of our deep dives into the IS lineup. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Make sure you hit like and subscribe for more Lexus related content. Lately, I've had so many people come into the dealership to talk about the IS 350. So what better time to do a video on this OEM Plus IS 350 in incognito. And big shout out to Jovan for letting us film your amazing car today. You did a great job. Let's get to it. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Make sure you hit like and subscribe for more Lexus related content. Okay, so let's get into some of the styling. We'll go over a few of the mods that Jovan has done, and let's take it for a drive after as well. So the IS 350 has been revamped over the last couple years, and Lexus has done a really good job of giving it that energy that it's always had. And no, Lexus isn't getting rid of the IS, however, there is a big change coming soon. Now, when this first color came out, it was very interesting because Lexus sort of has a trend on the colors that they use and the types of colors that they use. And when Incognito came out, it was such a curveball for the lineup, and it was so well received. Here's a color that doesn't have much metallic, is a little flatter, and very bold compared to all the other colors we have in the lineup. And for the IS, it does a great job of matching the energy of that car. Things like the black and gray, the way that they look together in contrast, but even the fact that the IS 350, and this is the F Sport 3 by the way, has some of those details in the grille, like actual active venting for the brakes and tires. I like that the outside of the grille is all blacked out instead of like that dark chrome. And Jovan did what I would do to this car and put on that side mount front license plate. Because yes, in Ontario, unfortunately, we have to have a front plate, and that grille just looks so good without having it smack dab in the middle. Also, one of the things about the IS 350 is the triple beam LED headlights that look really nicely underneath this daytime running light. And the best I can describe the daytime running light and that whole front end is it's a bit radical, and I love that. Also, you'll notice it does have a front-facing camera because in this package, you get panoramic surround view, which is like our bird's eye view, even though it is a little bit smaller of a car. Also, if you haven't noticed by now, the second mod that I want to talk to you about is this one is actually lowered a little bit. So usually the IS 350 has a decent amount of wheel gap. However, Jovan has decided to go with an RSR spring, which just lowered it just a little bit, got rid of a little bit of that body gap between the wheel and the fender. And he says that the drivability of it improved and did not get any worse. So we'll see that in the driving portion of today's video. Also, while we're over here, you'll notice the IS 350 F Sport 3 has these satin black alloy wheel design. And if you look past that, you'll see an RCF brake caliper. That's right, Jovan also had that painted and did a custom F on the rotor itself, which I absolutely adore. I think that's a great sort of like, it's like a little homage to that F lineup that we have. And it's so funny because a lot of the times when we have like an F package or an F Sport package, you know, we have some styling behind it, but to actually do a true F caliper with that RCF orange, I think really suits the car. It's one of those things that like an enthusiast would pick up on, but not necessarily everybody. And yeah, I definitely think that they should just come that way. Okay, let's talk about some side profile on the IS. So for one, we do have that F Sport badge and that little lip at the bottom of those doors that's black. Again, ties in really well with those satin wheels and those black accents in the front. Also, you'll notice the chrome has been blacked out on this mirror, and the chrome around the windows is also blacked out and just continues that black and gray look. Now, actual body lines. So we have a little crease that goes from the front to the back and just fades above the door handles. And then towards the back of the IS, it's almost like the back has a little bit of a wide booty to it, where this just kind of curves out a little bit. There's like almost like a little shelf there. And it makes it so that when you're looking at the IS from the front, it gives it that really aggressive stance. Because don't forget, the IS even has a staggered wheel setup, meaning it's one of the few Lexuses that has wider tires and a wider wheel in the back versus the front. So it really gives it that aggressive rear wheel drive stance, even though it is an all-wheel drive. Another thing that Jovan added to this car is the purple tinted windshield. It gives it one of those things where it's like, I haven't driven this car at nighttime or been in this car at nighttime, but during the day, when I'm looking at the fluorescent lights in here, it just has a purple reflection. So one of those things that just looks cool when the car's parked. If you're looking at it in a parking lot, you could sort of just see that purple shimmer and gives it a little bit of extra character. With it being lowered, I mean, I'm 6'1". I'm not towering over this car. However, it definitely is a sports car. So getting in and out of it is gonna be a little bit lower. And also, I should mention that even though it's a small car, that door sound and door feel is super heavy, super insulated, really gives it that Lexus feel where it's a luxury car and not just a car with a luxury badge. And that is important to me. Okay, so looking at the tail end of the IS350, we have that black spoiler, again, to sort of pull together the rest of the design language that we have. Also, one of my favorite taillights, it starts on one end, goes to the other, and when it gets into the center, it sort of gets really thin. And again, at nighttime, when you're driving behind one of these, it looks super high end, almost a little exotic, which I love. There's nothing worse than having a gorgeous car and having taillights that just look like any other taillight, or like a back end that looks like any other back end of any other car. Because at nighttime, you can't see the details of the rest of the car, especially if you're driving behind it. So having something like this is really sharp. Towards the bottom, we have a little bit of a diffuser here. Again, all that piano black and exposed exhaust, which I think is perfect for this car. I will say, so this car has probably close to 3,000 kilometers right now. The piano black holds up better than I expected. When they first launched this car, when I saw the piano black, I was like, is that gonna get scratched? Is it gonna get stone chips? But all around, front and back, it has held up really well. Okay, not to get to too much detail and go through whatever Jovan has in his trunk, the IS350 does have a decent space for being like a sport coupe. You can see there is a really high-end alloy wheel that Jovan just drives around in back there. Based on the size, I think it must be for a turbocharged Accord that belongs to his buddy Bilal, who's ISF. We've filmed on the channel. But even with that, there's still room for other things, dress shoes, gadgets, cleaning supplies, anything you need. So I think even if you were to take this car for a track day, you can have a little bit of space in there for some other things. Now, most IS owners don't really track their cars. I think most of the time they just use them as like a sport touring car. So it's gonna be groceries, golf clubs, stuff like that, but still lots of space in the trunk. Okay, so sitting in the IS350, one of the things that people will read online and will steer them away from this car is something that I don't even notice, and that is the hump by your leg. So when I'm driving, my leg is sort of like hovering right over top of that hump, and I think it's for like the front transaxle or something like that, or transfer case, whatever it is. I don't even notice it. The interior itself is super timeless to me, meaning it's not full of like gadgets that are gonna go out of date and any like super bold styling. The trim itself, we have a little bit of like a brushed aluminum on the sides. It's again, just sort of like a blacked textured bezel. And then just a really nice plain screen smack dab in the middle that you can touch or use the classic Lexus remote interface. Probably one of the last remote interfaces. In terms of button, steering wheel control gives us everything from radar cruise to lane departure, all in physical buttons. And one of the coolest things is actually the LFA inspired display where you can press a button and it'll move it over just like in the LFA. And I mean, when I say move it over, I mean mechanically move it over, not just like on a screen. And once you do that, you can see some things like G-force meters, fuel economy, et cetera, et cetera. Also, I'm always a big fan of the Lexus clock. And on this one, it's more like a modern take on the Lexus clock, where you can see some texture to it, you can see some design language, all of those things, and it's smack dab in the middle. We also have a different climate control system where you use your finger to like scroll up and down. This was really only on the IS and the RC, and I really like it. I mean, like, I'm not gonna tweak that too often. I'm just gonna sort of set it and leave it. And also the volume and tuning knobs are unique to the IS350 and the RC350. It's almost like a satin white gray, and it's, I don't know how to describe it, but it feels soft to touch. I know that sounds weird, but it's grippy and a little soft. And again, haven't seen that in any other of the Lexuses. Below that, we have some heated and cooled seats. Of course, this one has Mark Levinson, and there's something about the IS where it's like the loudest Mark Levinson system I've ever heard. I think it's like 1,500 watts, and when this car got redesigned, and we did a video on it, I remember being like, wow, this is also the loudest sound system I've heard in the lineup. Then we just have, some drive modes on this wheel. We have, snow mode, brake hold, which is super important. You can turn that traction control off, and then a couple cup holders and an armrest. It usually does have a wired CarPlay and Android Auto system. It's not the wireless. However, I can already see that Jovan has a little gadget in here that has upgraded that system a little bit. So I can't speak too much to that, but even using the mouse, I can already see it's a different system than the Lexus interface. So I'll have to ask him what he thinks about that, if he's really liked it. He's a little bit of a techie guy, so I'm sure he knows what he's doing, but I can see that he can even watch YouTube on here. And I bet you, if I click on it, he'd probably be watching this YouTube channel, because I know he's a big fan. Okay, let's talk about the interior. So this is the F-Sport white leather. So it does have some black inserts. Most of the interior is black, just with some white leather faces to the seats. And they've actually held up well. Like I said, this car has around the 3,000 kilometer mark. I don't see any big discoloration. Now, I don't think Jovan has any kids or lets his dog in here, so I don't see, any extra wear because of that. This armrest here might be a little bit tricky to keep clean because your color on your jacket or your shirt might come off on it a bit, but so far it's held up well. And this is a trend I'm seeing lately, is lighter interiors in cars. We have the macadamia, we have the F-Sport white, we have the birch. All of those have been very high demand lately. And I think it's because it just brightens up the interior. It adds a little bit of reflection, a little bit of light kind of coming from the bottom instead of just the top. And what I notice is even the dash, like this is a very blacked out dash, looks brighter because of the white. So that could be part of it. Okay, so sitting in the back of the IS350, I did just find a microfiber, which means this is probably his trick to keeping this interior so clean, is just have a little microfiber to like dust things off and wipe stuff down if you ever spill anything. Size-wise, the IS350 isn't known for being big back here. I mean, I'm 6'1", I'm fitting in here, my head's touching, my knees touching a little bit. The IS is supposed to be looked at as like a 4-door coupe, where it's not like this is like a family hauler, although if your kids are small, you could probably haul them around for a couple of years back here. It's more of like that sport sedan, so I'm not super surprised. But back here, we still have some nice amenities. It still has like the white armrests. We have this armrest here. There's no pass-through, but these seats fold down. So overall, not terrible, but I wouldn't want to sit back here for a long period of time. Okay, so that's enough of me talking about this car in the showroom. I'm super excited to take it for a drive, especially with the suspension. So let's hop in and see how it drives. Okay, so I'm gonna take it on the highway as well as kind of like a country road. The thing about the IS that I like, already the suspension feels pretty good. It's gonna be interesting to try the Sport Plus. The IS is usually known for like a really good, fun commuter car that is also like a sports car. And what I mean by that is it's a pretty smooth ride most of the time. When you wanna have some fun with it and put it in sport mode, easy to do so. You could sort of like take the windy roads home. So it's kind of like best of both worlds. I had one all summer as my demo, and I forgot how much I loved it because I don't always drive. Like I could go months without driving an IS. So I always like when I do. Already off the bat, even with the lowering kit, I just went over a pretty angled down ledge and I didn't scrape, I just did a little bit of an angle, it was fine. And our camera car right now, which is a Nissan GTR, also was like really close to scraping. So far so good. Driving position wise, so this is important because some people will look at the IS and think that it's like really low and small. But overall, vision is great. Yes, getting in and out of the IS, like if you had to make a bunch of stops throughout a day, being a taller guy, like it's a little bit of a leg workout, I'm not gonna lie. But actually sitting in it is totally fine. Like I have great visibility. I don't feel like I'm, driving on the ground, even though this one is lowered than most. And the steering is so light. Okay, I'm already noticing the suspension does have a little extra bounce to it, but that's okay. We're gonna go on the highway and we are going to punch it and see how the IS350 does for acceleration. I'm gonna put it just in sport mode, not Sport Plus. And I have the ASC on, which is the active sound control. So whatever you hear is gonna be what you hear driving it too. Downshift, and let's go. Oh yeah. Yeah, it sounds great. really good pickup. It's like one of those engines that you have to wind up a little bit to get the actual power out of it. So, you know, just keep that in mind. It's still, even with the lowering kit, it's still really smooth. I am gonna put it in Sport Plus just to see how much that tightens things up. What Sport Plus does is it sort of just like tightens up the strut itself, and the spring will obviously stay the same. It's like a different valve in the strut. So it's supposed to just make it feel a bit stiffer. And you know what? I do feel that, and it didn't make it feel much more bouncy. Now, I mean, the highway is probably the smoothest road to be testing this out, but even in my car, like I have a modified suspension car, I notice it really bouncy in mine. And this one is overall pretty smooth, like nothing too crazy. If we put it back in normal, I mean, it's just gonna be your commuter mode kind of thing. So overall pretty good for that. Just gonna do a little bit of a downshift here. And let's just do a little punch here. So we're in third gear. Just gonna go like that. So yeah, like the IS350, it's not supposed to blow your socks off. It's just supposed to have a little bit of power when you want it. And that's what that feels like to me. Like I said, is it super torquey at this speed? No, because like right now in drive, I'm in 6th gear and the RPM is down to like 2,000 and we're on the highway. So that just tells you that, you know, even for like a longer trip, it's gonna gear down and save a bit of fuel. But when you punch it, you know, you'll have to give it just that second to wind up again, because if not, you're not gonna feel that power. And that's fine. This is a really reliable power plant. The 3.5 liter V6, it's been around forever. It's super smooth, it's super reliable, it's low maintenance. Does it blow your socks off? No, not really, but it still does things that you want it to do. Okay, I'm just going through a little bit of an off ramp here. I just wanna punch it through here. Oh my God, yeah, okay. That's where this car comes alive. You go through a little curve. Oh my God, okay. This is how this car is supposed to be driven. I just went through a curve and I punched it through the curve and the car came alive, like better than the highway. So this is a car that prefers the twisties, you know what I mean? Let's do it again. There's a little S-bend here. I always take people on test drives here because of the S-bend. So we're just gonna make sure it's clear. We're gonna go the speed limit, but we're just gonna go fast. And it just hugs it. This suspension setup, I don't think the suspension feels like it changed it drastically, but the car itself is already well planted, right? And the IS, if you didn't know, has a lot of camber. So when you do a corner like that, it keeps it smooth and you're getting as much traction as you want from it too. Okay, so country road, going about 80 kilometers. Yeah, really smooth. I noticed the seat itself is comfortable for being like a sport seat. It's like more like a sport touring seat, I guess you could say. Again, maybe on a longer drive, would an ES350 be smoother? Yeah, but you're not gonna be able to get that cornering that I just did from an ES350 at all. Like there's no way. Again, great car for the city, great car for the country. Although because of it being a little bit lower, I wouldn't want to like go on too many bumpy roads, like maybe stone roads or anything like that. However, I think it's still an all-around car where if you live in the city, it's not gonna be hard to park. It's gonna be easy to manage. And then also, you know, you can take it on like a road trip type thing. And you could use the paddles and have some fun. And that's what I did for that corner, was I just made sure I paddled down, which I'm gonna do right now as well. And from a dig, like it does what you need it to do, especially in the corners. Yeah, this car is a cornering car, that's for sure. While driving it, and this was the same with the LC, the light interior just brightens everything up. I do have the sunroof shade open. However, even with that, it just, again, adds a little bit of dimension to this mostly black interior, which is really nice. I love the drive modes, like switching it from like Sport to Sport Plus is dynamite. And like I said, even in Sport Plus, which I'm gonna do right now in the city, I'm gonna have it in Sport Plus, it's not unbearable. You know what I mean? Like it's not driving like a slammed tuner car. It's actually still like a everyday car. And I know Jovan does drive this car like it's supposed to. Like it's not just a weekend car for him. He does have a truck and a few other things, but he can just drive this car, you know, every day if he wanted to. Hence the coffee money he's got in the cup holder. I will say I wish there was more exhaust noise. That is something about the IS350 that I wish it had. However, you can do a pretty good exhaust setup for pretty cheap. NVIDIA makes one, Joey's makes one. Those sorts of brands have been sort of known for IS350s. That could be probably the only extra OEM thing that I would want to do here, would be exactly that. This is the thing about the IS, is you could also drive it all winter. It is all-wheel drive. It's a rear-wheel drive platform. And I do want to mention that because of that camber, you will go through tires quicker. However, if you live in an area that, you get snow tires anyway, that's just gonna increase that longevity of it. Okay, so even in Sport Plus, in the city, I mean, it does feel a little bit stiff, but it's not bad. No much like recoil from the bounce. If you hit a pothole, you just feel it for a second, that's it. Can't complain about that at all. And like on a nice day like today, like I said, you can just kind of rip around corners, still have some fun. It reminds me of like the true driver's feeling of a car. Like, yes, the steering is super light because of the electronic power steering assisted. Like you can use a pinky to park this car, but you can surprisingly still feel some of the road. Like in the Sport Plus, I would say that connection to the road definitely is better than like the regular one. And that's important to note because not every IS has Sport Plus. You have to get something like an F Sport Series 3 to get it. And even without the Sport Plus, yes, the suspension is still Sport, but the Sport Plus just takes it up a level to get a little bit of that road feel. I can even feel like the tires making contact with the road, and not in a bad way. And it's funny because my friend has a Porsche 911, and I was surprised with how smooth his car is in the city and around corners. And I told him, I said, man, even though yours is like the race car version of the 911 is a GT3, it still felt like a Lexus IS to me. That's what I told him. I said, the handling and the suspension felt like a Lexus IS for a race car. And that's where I think a good baseline is this. Now, yes, Lexus is going to be redesigning this car soon. We were worried that they were gonna actually axe it and replace it entirely. But it does sound like they are gonna keep it. It does sound like maybe they're gonna get rid of how many versions of it there are, but that's okay because they will most likely keep the 350, which I think is important. Oh, here's some bumps. Yeah, Sport Plus, going over bumps, totally fine. All right, let's put it back to normal. Also, one of the things that I used to do, I don't have a lot of guests that I deal with now because we have salespeople for that, but when I used to deal with guests, one of my favorite things was the test drive for a few reasons. One is it's just nice to get out of the office. And I feel like that with like filming this video, it's kind of nice just to get out of the showroom. But two, it also was always fun just to like drive through nice neighborhoods. Like we're driving through this little area called Port Dalhousie right now. It's kind of like a cute little beach town. It's like a little harbor village with some great coffee shops, some really cool restaurants. In the summertime, it's packed down here. But even in the fall, like a lot of people out jogging, a lot of people walking their dogs, and around wintertime, it turns into like a little Christmas village. And when I would take guests for test drives, yes, we were there to experience the car, but also it's kind of like going for a drive with a friend where like, you talk about what you see and like, what's going on. And from previous jobs I had, you never had that freedom to just like go for a drive with a client and like get to know them and they get to know you. And, you could kind of just like spend some quality time in a beautiful car, which is part of the fun, right? And that's what Michelin did when they first launched the Michelin stars, was because it wasn't about selling tires. It was about where are those tires going to take you? And that's what I think about with luxury cars. It's not just about the car. It's about where is that car going to take you? And a car like this, you could go anywhere. Like you could go from Toronto to Ottawa. You could drive to Florida in this car and be comfortable and have fun. You could take the long way, stop at Till the Dragon. Like you could go on some famous roads and have a blast with it and commute. People are looking at us like crazy. All they see is this really loud tuned Nissan GTR with a camera guy hanging out the side and this incognito lowered IS350. I absolutely love the way that this probably looks in the community right now. I think that's really cool. We'll make the joke that we needed a GTR to be able to keep up to the IS350 for filming. Jovan is gonna love that. And that's the other thing, is I never knew why Lexus didn't just have these cars lower to begin with. Like you always see a little bit of wheel gap on ISs, and I just assumed that it was maybe because of components underneath, like being too close to the ground. but like we just did a drive where we did some city, we did some highway, we did some sort of country roads, and even went over like a really big slope, and that front bumper and the components underneath were never in a situation where they were gonna be scraping. The only thing I can think of is that maybe that makes it just like that extra bit lower for the driver's seat, like to get in and out of. A lot of times Lexus will sort of design where the seating position is and then build the car around it. And I wondered if that made it too low, that maybe it jeopardized losing customers or losing guests over the fact that it's low. Ooh, we're gonna do a little launch. Oh yeah. Even though it's not a torquey engine, that low RPM is good. Like you can punch it from a stop and it hooks nice. The upper end is where that horsepower lies for sure. There's no doubt about it. And in the middle RPM range is where there's not a ton going on. Like that's not its sweet spot for sure. So let's talk about the safety stuff. So we have lane departure and radar cruise control. I believe it's LSS 2.5, so it's not the latest one. It might be 2.0, I'd have to look. So it doesn't have the proximity and stuff like that, or the proactive driving assist. However, it's got the necessities, it's got blind spot monitoring, it's got parking sensors, it's got all that stuff. And Lexus does a good job of making it so you don't have to pay extra per safety feature. So if that makes sense, like the radar cruise, lane departure, all that stuff comes standard in most Lexuses, actually in all Lexuses. And they're super useful because all it takes is like one of those systems one time to kick in and it pays for itself just like that. Oh my gosh. So Jovan has like this phone holder here, and it's one of those ones with the magnet for iPhones. And it's great because one thing about cars is I never know where to put my phone. I usually put it like in the cup holder, in the armrest, and then I'll like go in a store and forget my phone in the car. But Jovan has this mounted phone holder that's like in the CD player, because this car still has a CD player, even though most people don't use it. And that's super clutch. I love that. I might get that for my LS. Okay, so there you have it. We're just pulling back in. Overall, great driving car. It's comfortable when you need it to be. It's sporty when you need it to be. There is a little range in the center where there's not much going on, but the high end and the low end is good. The most fun is that corner. So you could drive this car every day and never experience that cornering thing where mid-corner, punch it, downshifts, the G-force meters kick in, all that stuff. That was the most fun I've ever had in IS. So if you are gonna have one of these, make sure you push it that way once in a while. Like I didn't break any speed limits or anything like that, and it was just an absolute blast to drive. So make sure if you're gonna get an IS 350 like this, that you drive it like that. You put a little bit of cornering into it, have some fun, because that's just how to enjoy a car. Okay, so there you have it. This is what your IS 350 could look like with some gentle upgrades and just an overview of how it drives, how it looks, this particular spec of IS 350 with the Incognito on F Sport Series White. And another big shout out to Jovan, great job on this car. Thank you for letting us film it. If you haven't checked out, Jovan is a part of Witty Wheelers on Instagram, where they do a lot of fun automotive content, and this car has been featured in a number of those videos. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video, and if you have any other recommendations of vehicles I can film. Also, I do reply to all of my DMs on Instagram with other ideas, so feel free to look me up there as well. Hi, I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. And today, we're going to compare the new IS 500 with the classic ISF. And answer the question, is the IS 500 just the new version of the ISF? But before I get into that video, make sure you hit like and subscribe for more Lexus related content. And also a big thank you to Bilal for giving us his custom ISF for this video. So obviously the ISF has a lot of customization to it, but we can still do some comparisons on that front end. On the IS 500, you'll notice it does have a little bit more of a big presence for that front end. We have the massive spindle grille trimmed off by sort of some blacked out, it's not even blacked out chrome, it's kind of like a piano black trim around it with some air intakes at the bottom of that grille, a little bit of a plastic top to the bumper, and then this massive hood that has this really big bulge and vision lines that sort of all protrude down to that front nose. It's very different from the IS 350 and 300, and that hood is really what shows you that on the front end. We do have the new daytime running lights above the triple beam LED headlight with a little headlight washer there and a little bit more of that F Sport grille down to the side. Now over to the ISF. So right away, even though this ISF is lowered, you can still see that it is a lot smaller. In fact, even that front bumper, which is extended because of the carbon fiber, even the front bumper is a lot smaller than the previous one. Now this one does have some custom, really nice headlights with the new Lexus LED strip on top of the triple beam LED headlight. Little small spindle grille here with a Lexus emblem with some venting behind it. And at the bottom of the bumper, we have a little bit more of that continuation of aero and spindle grille, and then a huge intake vent here for cooling the brakes and the tires, just like on the IS 500. Nice little LED fog light here surrounded by some carbon fiber, and then obviously this gorgeous Novus carbon fiber lip at the bottom. But when you look at the hood, this actually blew my mind when I compared the two of them because it's a lot smaller than the IS 500. The IS 500 looks like there's a V8 under there. It's got like this cowl look to it, like a classic muscle car cowl. And the ISF, I'm looking at it being like, where did they put that engine? Because it looks like it wouldn't even fit under here, which is really cool. By the way, you might notice, this one does have a custom paint job and has a little nice blue shine behind that white paint. So looking at the ISF brake and wheel setup. So this one has a huge brake kit on it with crossed slotted and drilled rotors. It has a massive orange, painted orange like the GSF, F caliper on there. It's like a big brake kit on this one. And the IS 500 also seems to have a big brake kit, but it doesn't seem as aggressive, especially when you're driving. It's not as grabby as like the ISF was. It's definitely not tuned to that level. Also on the IS 500, we have the new F Sport badge. It's not a true F badge, where on the ISF, that is what we saw there. Now this one has a custom titanium brushed metal badge, which is a little bit different, and I like that. Underneath the badge, you'll notice one of the more telltale signs of an F, and that's the venting here on that little quarter panel that kind of goes into that bottom side skirt. And on the IS 500, we don't have that. When it comes to the side silhouettes of both of these cars, you can really see how much bigger the IS 500 got versus this 2008 IS platform. So again, it does seem small. This is a lowered vehicle. We don't have a ton of aggressive lines on the side of the ISF. The body's a little more rounded, but we still have a little bit. It's like we have this little edge here that goes into that quarter panel with a little bit of a curve there. The biggest difference though is the ISF seems like it has a wide body kit versus the regular IS 300 and 350 from these years, and I guess maybe 250 from these years. It just looks wide. It's got this really big stance to it where the back looks a little bit wider, the fenders look flared out. It's got this aggressive stance. The IS 500 doesn't necessarily do that, but everything's a little bit bigger on the IS 500 versus the ISF. We have a similar body line, believe it or not, on the top of this door panel and an even more similar shape in this rear quarter. Actually, it's almost the same angles as the ISF, but just a whole lot bigger. Also, the car seems a little bit taller. It seems a little bit wider. We have some extra trims, like everything's blacked out around the windows, the black mirror caps, the door handles, all that stuff. Actually, it's so funny because this rear door actually has this big curvature that makes it look like it's gonna get aggressive into a wide body kit, but then it doesn't. So I'm not too sure if Lexus was maybe saving that for a future model. I'm not too sure, but nonetheless, it's there. So the back of the IS 500 is where we have a little bit more of that F personality. And what I mean by that is these exhausts. So the classic ISF exhaust is the quads that are sort of on an angle like that. Lexus did a great job of incorporating that into this piano black with a little bit of a diffuser sort of rear end here, and it sounds absolutely amazing. Above that, we have the new taillight on all the ISs where it's like an L shape and then it goes across to the other side. We have an IS 500 badge, Lexus badge in the middle, and then this piano black spoiler that really accents that diffuser as well. Now over to the ISF. So again, this one is a little bit custom. So we are seeing a similar style of taillight where it has an L and then underlines to the other side. And we have some custom exhausts that are still that ISF sort of angle here. It's just they come out a little bit more and they still have some nice body lines with this custom diffuser, carbon fiber diffuser. It sort of looks like that new IS 500 just exaggerated a little bit, which is kind of cool. We have the Lexus badges and the ISF badge, all with that nice brushed titanium with like the little bit of blue because of it. So I really do like that. And then above that, we have this spoiler that it's made by Wald. It's got a little bit of a lip to it, but it's cool because when you look at it from right at the back, it looks very factory, which I like until you get up close and then you can see that, oh no, that actually is a spoiler. It's not the shape of the trunk. And I think that that really tied together this back end. And to say against the ISF and the IS 500 both have awesome looking rear ends, especially because of that exhaust, which is so important on a car that's supposed to be fast because that's where everybody's gonna see it. So sitting in the ISF, we don't have a lot going on here. This is a 2008 platform. So this is years before things like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, big touch screens, etc. But we do have a very usable Lexus screen. It is touchscreen and there is solid buttons on the side for shortcuts. The climate control and everything is all right there that you can actually press the physical button. There's a volume knob, a tuner knob, all of those things that we do love. Now, Bilal did put a custom steering wheel in here with some really nice custom carbon fiber to tie in the light interior with the white leather and all the other carbon fiber. And it's interesting to note, in 2008, these paddle shifters was the quickest shifting transmission in the paddle mode that you could get in the market at the time, because when the paddle shifter started to come out, it was almost like you were just forcing the car into gear. You were just telling, you know, this one down here that you were wanting to shift and it would do it after it understood. But with the ISF, it was really quick and hard. You would hit that shift and the car would shift. It was almost like a race car. It was like the closest thing to a race car at the time. Because of that, it really increased that driving experience, which this whole cabin just states this is a driver's car. There's not a ton of luxuries and amenities. You had things like heated seats. It wasn't an LS, if you know what I mean. But the real best thing about this interior is actually just this. Because the engine is actually why we're here. So sitting in the IS 500, we do have a lot more amenities and technologies and all these other things because we're in the model year 2024 now, which is a big fast forward from the 2008 ISF. However, as I'm sitting here, I'm realizing that it still has the same personality as the ISF. And what I mean by that is the dash is pretty plain and easy and laid out very nicely. Yes, we have the new screen and it's closer to you. And actually in the IS 500, it's still sort of the last generation's multimedia system, which a lot of people actually really like because it's just simple and easy to use. You can touch here, you can use it as a touch screen or use the Lexus remote interface, little mouse in the center. It's quick, it's easy, it does what you need to do. It has Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Our climate controls are still all physical buttons with the little slidey thing that I like for actually changing the climate. We have a volume knob and a tuner knob still. We have some heated and cooled seats that are all still buttons. And I know it sounds silly to say that, but so many new cars, it's all through the screen. Like all of these buttons have disappeared into the screen on a lot of newer Lexuses. So there is definitely still people out there that would rather a physical knob for, you know, changing the drive modes into Sport and Sport Plus, which the IS 500 does have, by the way. You can tune the suspension for that. The gauge cluster is a big difference as well, where we have that LFA digital gauge. You can move it over, you can customize what you see there. Again, for the IS 500, the real reason we're here is that engine, which by the way, does sound a little different from the ISF. And Lexus actually has it being piped into the cabin with a little button on my left that says ASC, Active Sound Control, where it's taking that engine noise and piping it into the cabin. Now with that, yes, you can hear a little more of the tone and the downshifts and stuff like that. But even if you shut it off, you can still hear that intake. You can still hear that engine roar to life. Not as raspy as the ISF. I think that was a little bit more raw exhaust, but still it's a V8 under the hood of this and you can still experience that. So the back of the IS 500 is nothing to write home about, and that's okay. It does have enough space for myself, and I'm about 6'1". My head's definitely touching the headliner if I'm sitting up straight, but if I'm gonna be active in a conversation in the front, I'm gonna lean a little bit and I'll be fine. It has a little armrest, it has some vents back here, and don't forget the IS is supposed to be sort of a coupe with 4 doors, and that's kind of what it feels like back here. Is I can fit back here if I have to, but it's a driver's car. The person buying it's gonna be up front. So the question lies, is the IS 500 the new ISF? And the answer is simple. It's not, but it's close. And I think the reason Lexus didn't use the ISF badge on the 500 is perhaps there is a new ISF coming down the pipeline. That's the rumor anyways. We have a similar power plant where it's both 5-liter V8s with a sporty transmission in a rear-wheel drive platform. The ISF is a little bit more rowdy. We got that loud body kit, really big aggressive brakes. You could do donuts in the parking lot. There's not gonna be all of these electronics trying to stop you. And the IS 500 has all the new amenities and a little bit more of that subtle styling. It's not quite as wide or aggressive. You could drive this car every day to work and not wake up your neighbors and not have the whole world watching you. Are you gonna do donuts in the parking lot? Maybe, probably not, but perhaps. And I do think Lexus, calling it the F Sport Performance, is just a little hint at probably a new F model to come out in the IS platform. Maybe they were just testing the waters. Behind me today is a 2023 Lexus IS 300 luxury package. But before we get into that, make sure you like and subscribe, and feel free to comment on any of the videos. I always try to get back to the comments. I might not get back to all of them, but I am going to try. And let us know if there's any videos you would like to see. But let's get right into it. So this is the 2023 Lexus IS 300. And it is in the luxury package in this gorgeous blue color, as you can see. And the luxury package maybe is a little bit less common versus like the sport packages for the IS, but we're gonna review it anyway. So taking a look at that design language of the front grille, it's not quite the same spindle grille as the F Sports. There are some differences. This one kind of reminds me of like razor wire, you know, instead of barbed wire. I know that's a little dramatic when talking about car parts, but you'll see what I mean there. We have these little, you know, thin but wide areas conjoined by the spindle, and it's a little more subtle than the more aggressive F Sport spindle. So that's really nice. We have it complemented by some very mirrored chrome finishes just on the sides and a little bit of the bottom, nothing on the top. And that really shows a very big front grille on the IS, even though the front end of the IS is actually kind of small. So it is a little bit of an illusion there, but it looks really well, and it hides things underneath like the support beam going across, or, you know, parking sensors, stuff like that. The rest of the grille is, you know, more luxurious. We have big panels here, not much venting, a little bit here with that matte gray finish, but for the most part, all body color. We have a parking sensor and a headlight washer, which I like because of salt on headlights. This cleans it off, which is great. Also, you'll notice the daytime running light is above the headlight instead of below. Most Lexuses are below, except for, you know, the UX, the IS, and a few others. So that's really nice, and it is, when it's on, it's a very nice frosted finish. Really good job there. Underneath on this package, we have a single LED headlights, but on other ones, some of the, you know, if you looked at like an IS 350 fully loaded, you would see a triple beam, which is really nice. But on this one, it's the single one, and it's still really great at night, just a little bit different in styling. In terms of body lines, on the hood, we have a really nice line here that kind of creates a little bit of a visual reminder for the driver to see that hood a little bit, and then tapers off into the really, you know, slanted front end. Some colors you can see this more on. The silver, you can really see it. Anything with a high metallic, you can see it, but on, you know, this color, on the black, it doesn't stick out as much, so I wanted to point it out to you there. But for the side, so on the luxury package, we have this multi-spoke wheel. It's kind of like a silver with, not a whole lot of metallic to it, more of a gloss silver. And on the blue, it looks great. I really like the way they did it. At first I thought with a light blue color, I would like a darker wheel like we see in the ES F Sport and F Sport design. But I think this is the way to go. I really like the silver in this. I think they complement each other. So that is really beautiful. We have some black accents too. We have a black top to the mirror, little vortex generator in this corner. And if you don't know what that is, it's an old Toyota and Lexus little detail. That's nice. And that whole window section is trimmed around in full by the mirrored chrome, which matches that front chrome. So I really like that, and I think it makes total sense. In terms of silhouettes, we have a little bit of angles towards the bottom of the car, which is really nice. A little bit of flowy, roundish curves to the top, and then that roof line does really taper off quite quickly because of it is a shorter wheelbase, so they need to get that height for the passengers and then bring it back down. And you'll notice, even on the back door, it's all contained. That window trim is all contained on the door and doesn't overflow onto that rear quarter panel. Speaking of that rear quarter panel, there is a really nice curvy line at the top here, kind of turns into a shelf and then rounds down, and it makes the back end of the IS feel and look, really big. A lot bigger than it is because it is quite the small sedan. Let's look at the back end. And for that, I need to turn on the taillights for you because they are super sharp. So what I mean by super sharp is that taillight actually does look kind of sharp. I think it was supposed to look like Samurai Sword, some homage to some Japanese history there, and it does follow, from one end all the way to the other. Very happy to see this in the Lexus lineup. We see it on the UX, we see sort of a version of this on the LX, for instance, and I really like it. I think in traffic, when you're far back from the car, which is something I always think about taillights, is this is how all the people behind me are gonna see me, and it does, capture your attention. The rest of it, we do have a big flat place here at the top of the boot, at the top of the trunk, and then it, tapers, or it kind of cliffs off very sharp. And then down here, we have a little bit of a matte gray finish. I'm not sure why they didn't do body color. Maybe it's to protect from stone chips or something. But I was surprised at that because it is, kind of just a soft plastic there. But I don't see many of them come back with any damage or scratches. So there must be a reason. Also, we have exposed exhaust tips. And if you haven't heard, there is an F Sport exhaust accessory you can buy. It is a little on the pricey side, but it sounds amazing and it looks really good too. So that could be something you can get right from Lexus if you're interested in the IS and making it sound a little nicer. In terms of the trunk, it's not super huge because this is still kind of a small car, but you could definitely fit at least one golf bag in there, maybe a few other things, and the back seats fold down, 60-40 split. So if you did have to have two golf bags, you could just, or cart, you could just fold down those rear seats and sort of just, have them all angled towards the front. But other than that, it's nothing too crazy. Again, the IS, when it was designed, was sort of supposed to be, a coupe with 4 doors. So kind of like a Grand Coupe, I guess you could say. So the back seat the trunk is not supposed to be very big. So that sport design of the exterior of the IS flows right into the cabin here. It is quite dark, I will say that. All of the accents are, dark grays or blacks with a little bit of piano black, gloss black areas. There is a few, more grayish type accents, but for the most part, it is very dark in here. You can get this with a lighter interior, but this one is the black one. In terms of layout, everything is very close to you. And a lot of people like that in a car where, everything feels like it's right there on you. You're not super spaced out. It's comfy. It's like a hug. And that's exactly what the IS does. We do have, the Lexus touchpad here and also a touch screen, which is nice. You can choose between the two of those. We have beside that a little bit of a selector knob with, a snow mode, sport mode, eco mode, all that stuff. Heated and cooled seats, heated steering wheel, all above the shifter, which when you're in drive, it is super easy to access that stuff. And the climate control in the IS is one of my favorites. I don't know why, but you could just slide your hand up and down on this little bar that's there to set that auto climate control temperature. It's one of the only cars in the lineup that has it, and they've retained it over many years. It's cool. I love when brands and Lexus and Toyota do little cool things that are different from all the other models to differentiate. You don't want to just sit in every model Lexus lineup and feel like you're in, you know, the same car. It's cool to have some differentiating. So that's really nice. The clock on here is gorgeous as well. It's more of a modern clock. So there is like a carbon fiber face to it. It is really well backlit, which is nice. And overall just kind of goes off that sporty vibe. This particular one, for the gauge cluster, has a speedometer and a tachometer and then a little TFT screen in the center. The sport model has the LFA inspired cluster, which is really nice. You can move over mechanically the gauges, customize them a little bit in the sport models, and I've always really been a big fan of that. But overall, I still have lots of space in here. I'm 6'1". As a driver, I think it would be really fun. It hugs you, so you want to drive a little bit more spirited without sliding all over the place. And there's another thing about the interior, is a lot of people talk about the hump that the IS has, where your leg goes. I don't know if it's just how my leg, the size of my leg, I don't notice it at all. In fact, when I first started working here, everybody mentioned that the hump, and I didn't even notice it until someone pointed it out. So it doesn't bother me any, maybe if I really think about it and I try to put my leg on top, but in a normal driving position, I don't even notice it. So you can let me know if you do. The back seat of the IS is kind of small. My head is kind of touching the roof a little bit. The front seat is kind of touching my legs a little bit. There's a massive hump for the drive shaft in the center. So, you know, having 3 people back here wouldn't be the most comfortable thing for me, per se. But 2 people could fit back here. If we're headed to a restaurant with some buddies, I could definitely be back here and not have a problem. But I wouldn't want to be back here for a road trip from Toronto to Florida, for instance. I don't think that this would be the car for that, and it's not really supposed to be. It's supposed to be kind of a sporty, coupe-ish sedan, and it just so happens to have a back seat that works. So no big deal there. We do have an armrest that comes down with some cup holders that fold out. Nothing to write home about there, but it is there. And we do also have some vents, which is surprising because of a lot of times small cars like this don't have vents for the back, but they are there. They still have some piano black bezels, and you know, overall, there is a back seat here. It's just not very big, and it doesn't need to be. So who is the IS for? Someone who wants to have a smile on the face every day when they drive to work and wants that spirited drive with amazing handling, a low center of gravity, an all-wheel drive powertrain with a true V6. And I think the most important part about this car is I don't know how many more years left we have of cars like this. With the way the industry is going, electric cars, smaller 4-cylinder engines, better fuel economy, I don't know, you know, when this is gonna stop, but for right now, I would get your hands on it if you've always wanted an IS, because it still has a little bit of that true driving feel. It's still luxurious enough that it's smooth to drive to work every single day and won't break the bank in terms of price. So thank you for watching. I'm Dustin Mason at Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Remember, we are a real dealership, so if you like this car and you want to take one for a spin, or any of the other stuff in the Lexus lineup or on our pre-owned section, feel free to reach out or come on down to St. Catharines, and make sure you like, subscribe, send me a comment, let me know what kind of videos you guys want to see, and I'll continue to do this as long as I can. Today, I'm welcoming back a very special guest to the channel, the Lexus ISF. Bilal's Lexus ISF. And there's a few reasons why we are welcoming this VIP back in today's video. Number one is Bilal has done some more upgrades to it, and I'm gonna go into that a little bit. But the second thing is something that rarely happens on this channel. And today I'm gonna take this ISF for a drive on the streets to do some driving impressions, as well as answer the question, should I trade in my Toyota Supra for this ISF? I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Make sure you hit like and subscribe for more Lexus related content. And don't forget to go back to some older videos of the ISF versus the IS 500, and also a little bit more of a deep dive. So before we go for the drive, let's get reacquainted with the ISF and start pointing out some changes from the last time's video. The first one is the front bumper. Bilal used to have the novel bumper, and now we have the walled bumper on there for a pretty catastrophic reason. Something happened to the last one. And I know in the comment section, people are gonna say, well, the other one was so much better. I actually like this setup more for a few reasons. I really like the two-tone contrast with the carbon just peeking out. And this bumper just reminds me more of my tuner days, which was a big part of the history in the ISF. And it just, I don't know, maybe it's the angles, maybe it's the lines, maybe it's the fit and finish, but it does remind me of the classic JDM tuner culture from, you know, Need for Speed Underground and stuff like that. Obviously, we have the spindle grille and the really more modern, updated daytime running lights that have some features like, you know, flicker and sequential and stuff like that. A little bit of that angry eyebrow painted on the top of the headlight. I know some people love that, some people don't, but something that no one can argue with how amazing it is on the side profile. And if you walked by this car, you might miss it at first. And really, what that is these F badges. The coolest part about these F badges that I like, yes, it's got that brushed, burnt titanium look, but there's another detail that ties in well, and that's the paint color. This isn't actually a Lexus factory paint. In fact, when the sun hits it, it has a little blue shimmer, and it's a very similar shimmer to this custom F logo. Speaking of custom F logos, if we get down and look at his really cool wheel setup, I can't remember the alloy wheel, but I know a lot of you can. We have those F brake calipers just like on the RCF. In fact, they're the same logo, the same color, and they're a big brake kit, so how can you go wrong? Another small detail that I keep forgetting about, but is really cool once you see, is also the tinted windshield. And no, it's not, you know, a dark tint to be able to hide your identity or anything like that. Instead, it just has a little bit of color, and I'm overusing that word shimmer, but I have no idea how else to describe it, where it's got a little bit of a shimmer to it so that it just looks a little bit different and a little bit cool. So at the back of the ISF, we have some more modifications. The biggest being this huge carbon fiber novel rear diffuser. I can't remember the price tag on that, but it's huge and is well worth it in my opinion. This custom exhaust that sort of Frankensteined a few different exhaust companies, but it still kept that quads look, and let me tell you, it sounds amazing. And this duckbill spoiler that integrates, again, the really nice titanium Lexus emblem. But one of the coolest party tricks of this rear end is the taillights. The sequential new design taillight. So it's just like the new ISs and IS 500s where it goes from one side to the other, but as aftermarket companies sometimes do, they took it a step above where it does that little decoration that you saw on startup and looks super, super sharp and three-dimensional in person. However, the coolest thing of this car, and one of the newest modifications, is on the inside. So that's right, this ISF actually has new RCF seats in it. And it probably makes it the only one in the world that has it. So the RCF seats were always something that caught my attention when that car first launched. I liked how big the bolsters are. I liked sort of the 4-point harness looking mesh above the shoulders. Of course, the fact that it's like a one-piece back and it doesn't have the headrest that goes up and down, but somehow still remains super ergonomic and just seems to fit in this car perfectly without losing things like heated and cooled seats as well. And I like the nice touch of the leather matching on the gear shift with that new setup. Last time I sat in this car, it had like the factory white leather seats. And from what I heard, the rear seats were even harder to do. So the rear seats are also RCF leathers. However, it was way harder to fabricate because the RCF back seat is very different from the ISF back seat. So what Bilal and his team of creative car enthusiasts did was take the skins off of the rear RCF seats and then sort of stretch and mold them to the rear of the ISF and add some padding and stuff, and even had to do a trip to Fabricland for these side pieces here that somehow matches perfectly and was able to still tie in the F outside pieces that have the logo on it. And even with all that stretching and moving around fabrics and stuff like that, they still look great. They're super comfy. They look a little bit more satin than the front seats, but I just think those front seats are in such great shape. But still overall looks like they just belong here. And that's what makes this a super, super rare ISF build. Okay, I'm too excited to keep talking about all of the features inside the showroom when really, let's take it for a drive and see if it's worth trading in my Supra for. Okay, so also, this is new for us to film at nighttime, in a car especially, so bear with us, but still excited to be able to drive the ISF. Right away, the exhaust is unreal. I mean, I love the sound of my 2JZ, but there's something about a V8 with proper exhaust that is hard to beat. This car is definitely tight. It's low, but the suspension so far doesn't feel too bad. I did scrape just a little bit. To be honest, my biggest worry right now isn't going to be my vision and stuff. It's gonna be, are the cameras gonna stay in place when I actually punch it? Because we know I am gonna punch it once I get the chance, once we get on the highway. Headlights are pointed a little bit down, I noticed. So we'll have to get Wall to tweak that a little bit. My Supra's the same because it's a right-hand drive, so the way that my headlights are pointed used to be set up for the other side of the road, realistically. Okay, so in the city, it's good. It's super well planted, really smooth. There we go. Okay, he's got switchbacks. If you don't know what switchbacks are, they're a headlight LED system that when you turn them on, they're a certain color, usually like a white, and then you turn them off and back on, and it switches them back to like a yellow, which is really JDM. It's kind of like a JDM thing to do. My brother has them on his pickup truck and his motorcycle. They're cool if you want a little bit of an aesthetic without having to sacrifice getting like a ticket if you live in an area that you can't have something like that. Okay, we're getting on the highway. I'm gonna punch it in a few seconds, so just brace ourselves here. Okay, let's see what this puppy can do. Damn, okay. It hooks up well. Actually, I can smell the exhaust from inside the car right now, which is wild to me. A little bit of drone, but nothing too crazy. That power was fun. So we're gonna get off the highway now and just try it again. I can't just, like, the thing about this car is it's a muscle car. And that's what that sounded like to me, is like when you're at a car meet and some guy in his V8 American muscle, oh, that's crazy. Even the high beams are switchbacks, which is crazy to me. Some guy in his V8 muscle car peels away. That's what this car is doing when you punch it, is it's like, it's hard shifts, like they sound hard. You hit that rev limiter a little bit. I'm just gonna roll down my window so I can see better. And we're on a little bit of a country road. I like to test drive out this way. For anybody that has a car that I've bought from me, I will sometimes test drive out this way because it's a little bit bumpy and a little bit windy. Okay, launch. Traction control made that nice and grippy, which I really like. We're going about the speed limit. Really quick acceleration and smooth, man. This car is smooth. For being a sports car with modifications, it feels great, to be honest. Like, this is a bumpy road that if you were driving something like a Toyota 86 or something with like a smaller wheelbase or maybe not as heavy a car, you would hear like dun 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 as you drive on this. Even with his wheel setup, which is an aftermarket wheel setup, low pros, he's got sticky tires on, I will say that, and that does help with a little bit of this. But overall, man, oh, this is good. We're gonna try out the paddle shifters now. So I'm gonna put it in manual mode. First thing I always do in manual mode, I'm in 8th gear right now as I punch it. Oh, I love that, you guys. Okay, so if you didn't know, there is a difference between a manual shift and a sport shift. This one says M beside the D, which means manual mode. And what that means is it won't automatically downshift. So some of the sport ones will automatically downshift when you're in like 8th and you punch it. This one, you have to do it manually, which is sick. And when you do it manually, I'm just doing some downshifts. We're gonna do some upshifts a little bit up the road. Ooh, yeah, okay, that's cool. That one was a little bit much. I went down into first. Again, I'm gonna roll down my window so I can see, and we'll do some rollers. Let's go, let's roll. I should have prepared the camera guy for that. nice, yeah. Overall, really good shifting with these paddles. And they're kind of like metal feeling too, which I forgot about. Reminds me of the LC. I actually heard a little bit of intake there. Ooh, that downshift. Oh my gosh. Oh, I wish I could do that again. Bilal, your exhaust setup is amazing. Okay, we're gonna go back into third. I'm actually going slower than the speed limit right now, and I just want to downshift. Unbelievable. That's really nice. And I do get that in my Supra, but it's manual, so it's different, I feel like. I feel like I'm doing more to make it sound like that. Where in this one, I just hit that little blipper. Just get that blippy. Really nice. Okay, let's talk about the comfort. So I'm going about 80 kilometers an hour right now. On like a country road, it's a little bit back. It's not the highway, it's like a city street, I guess you could say. It's a little bit bumpier. And I feel, so even though it's an aftermarket seat, or not an aftermarket seat, but a modified seat, I'm really centered, I feel super planted. The armrest is still in a really good spot. I will say, my only complaint in this car, Bilal, is the windshield. The tinted windshield gives it like a cool look from the outside of the car and cuts down any glare on the inside. Like cars coming towards me, it doesn't take, like it feels like when a car is coming towards me, there's no glare from those headlights. So it doesn't take up, the headlights don't take up as much as my windshield as they would normally. However, I think because we have all these lights on in the car so that we can film, it's harder to look out than normal, I think. I think that's what it is. But normally, I mean, the fact that it cuts down that glare, I do like. I don't mind that at all. So that's that. The seats, like I said, super comfortable. I really like the steering wheel and like that carbon fiber look on the steering wheel. Overall, this is a great touring car, I would say. Like, looking at it modified from the outside, I was skeptical whether this is like a car you can drive for extended periods of time. But when you actually get in it, and like, I think the seats have a big part to do with this. The seats and the suspension for sure. It feels like you could just get on the road and just go. So that's a huge thing when you're looking for a car like this, because the ISF is a track monster, or it can be a track monster, but originally people just used it like a touring car. And I know a lot of people who actually daily drove these cars because it's such a reliable platform. I mean, I think that was when gas prices was a lot cheaper, because now I'm sure if we ask any ISF owner if he or she would daily it, and I think they would say they would, but they can't afford to because of the gas prices. And that's like it is with my LS, and actually my Supra too, because of the tune that I have on it. I'm gonna put it back in regular drive, and we're gonna do another little pull here. We'll just wait. Ooh, a little tunnel. Oh my God, yeah, that's sick. That was just a little tunnel we went under. I see the blinkers are going quicker. That's because of the aftermarket signals usually. Probably just have to put like a resistor in or something. Here we go. Yeah, that's shifting. Like, I remember reading that this transmission was one of the fastest transmissions, not just for the Lexus lineup, but when the ISF first came out, it was one of the fastest shifting automatic transmissions in the world. And I mean, I just assumed that we've come so far since then that it wouldn't be like that anymore. But even driving this car after driving brand new cars all the time, it does a great job. That is a great 8-speed transmission that this car has. In terms of wind noise, I mean, even with the sunroof visor open, and the very Alcantara hood liner, by the way, it's super quiet in here. I mean, that drone, once it gets into 8th gear, even going like highway speeds or around highway speeds, I don't hear much of a drone. Even when I'm on the gas a little bit, like on a little bit of a hill or whatever, it's still super, super doable and comfortable. Okay, so one of the other things I'm noticing while I'm playing with the paddle shifters is, depending on the RPM range, there is a really distinct difference in the sound of the exhaust. Like between 3,500 and 4,500 is really nice. So like I'm in 5th gear. Oh yeah, right there. So 5th gear, 3,500 RPM. Oh my God, that just sounds unbelievable. I'm a big fan of the similar engine setup on the LC500 and how it took 5 years for them to engineer the exhaust on the LC500. But this, my friends, There's no crackle and pops, so it's just throat and orchestra, right? Like, this is back when engines didn't have to have these crackle tunes and like those burble exhausts. And it's just a linear sounding grunt as someone is driving down the highway, just like that. And then when you start to get in it a little bit with a little bit more throttle, you hear a little more raspiness. Like, it's like someone clearing their throat. I could drive this car for hours and be fine. In fact, if Bilal ever sells this thing, I'm gonna be, well, he's probably got too much money into it, but I would be signing up for maybe a higher mileage ISF in the future at some time. Because I probably would drive this every day. I don't see why I wouldn't. And it just sits happily at high speeds. The whole car is designed for it. You can tell. You can tell that the aerodynamics is designed, the brakes are designed, the suspension is definitely happy at any speeds going around corners. Ooh, there's a nice sound. I'm just gonna listen to that. The decelerating downshift, next level. And the best part is he's at the dealership right now, so he's gonna hear us coming down the street in his ISF, which his friends say he doesn't push hard enough, but that's what we were doing here today, so. I had to do a little. We're gonna do my little trick of decelerating and then just touching the gas. Oh yeah, that sounds good. That was really testing what we're used to. So, you're probably wondering, what's the verdict? Should I trade in my Mark IV Supra for this ISF? The answer is I would want both of them, because in my opinion, even though they're both JDM legends and are amazing sports cars and in the tuner world are super well respected, they're both a little bit different. The ISF could be a car you drive every single day and put 300,000 kilometers on. And in fact, I've seen that done time and time again, and still be able to customize it and make it your own and get mad street cred like Bilal did here, where my Toyota Supra is a little different. It's so unique and hard to drive that I barely drive it anymore. Just, you know, on special occasions like a Sunday, a sunny Sunday. And if you want more about that video, you can check out my other channel, which I'll post below. But for the Lexus ISF, I think I would need to get my hands on one and drive it every single day. And if you ever see one for sale, you should buy one, because there are not going to be many of these left. So, I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Thank you for watching this video. Let me know in the comments below what you would choose between the Mark IV Supra and the Lexus ISF, and I'll see you in the next video. Here's the thing, most automotive reviewers spend a couple hours with the car and then tell you all about it. Well, today I'm gonna show you a deep dive into the IS350, the exact car that I've been driving for the last number of months. So not only am I gonna show you the good, but if you stick around to the end of the video, I'll show you a few things that you need to watch out for when you're buying a new IS350. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Let me know in the comments below what you think of this video, and don't forget to subscribe. Okay, getting right into things here. The car beside me is a 2024 IS350 F-Sport Series 2 in, you guessed it, Dustin Blue. Actually, it's called Ultrasonic Blue, but it is my favorite color lately. As you've seen on the channel, we've had the LC and the ES, and now the IS in Ultrasonic Blue. So in 2024 on the F-Sport, a few things to go over on the front end here. So we do have the big F-Sport grille, which has the little hatching that we have for any of the Lexus sport models, as well as one of my favorite features that I'm surprised no one has called me out for yet in the comment section, and that is the washers for the headlights. Even my own uncle called me out for them when I was showing him this car, and I showed him how excited I was that this has it. And he said his old Volvo in the 80s had that, so I shouldn't be as excited, but I am. So we also have the daytime running lights right above the bi-LED headlights, and it is a really sharp frosted type daytime running light, and it gives the whole front end a really mean look. In fact, if you look at the angles of the front end, everything sort of goes in towards and makes your eyes sort of go in towards that center of the grille, and the daytime running light sort of starts that happening with the angular that it has. And the bumper itself has that same angle, and it kind of follows theme and then curves out towards the bottom that has a real active air duct in the front bumper. There's nothing that annoys us car people more than when we see things like fake air ducts or fake exhaust or anything like that. So seeing that the IS has that shows you that this car is oriented towards a driving enthusiast. We also have some hidden parking sensors in the grille, as well as the classic older Lexus emblem. We do see some newer ones, and it isn't the heated one, by the way. On the actual hood itself, we've seen some changes over the last couple of years. We have an angle kind of starting from the quarter panel and wrapping around with a little bit of curvature towards the front. Now, my boss, whenever he gives me a car to drive, he makes me put the PPF on, and for good reason, because any car I would buy myself, and in fact, anytime I've bought a new vehicle myself, I've always gotten it PPF'd. And this one has it a little bit up towards, I guess, a third of the way up the hood. And you can't really see it unless it's dirty, and then you can see sort of the line. But even when you get up close, sometimes you have to feel that it's there. And that protects that front part of the hood. On the IS and on most of our lineup, it's not a bad idea because, you know, having the bumper, which is plastic, have some stone chips is pretty easy, but having the hood, it is metal, so any stone chips you are gonna wanna touch up, that PPF is gonna protect it, especially because if it has a little bit of that curvature. Okay, as we get to the side profile, just pay attention to how tall the car is. This is still sort of a coupe that has 4 doors, is how Lexus designed it. So me standing beside it at 6'1" gives you a really good indication of how low this car really is. In fact, that's why I ended up with this car to begin with, was my boss actually plated it for his demo, but he decided, you know, I'm a little bit younger and more spry, that it would be easier for me to get in and out of this car than he would. And obviously, I happily accepted this beautiful car as my demo. So a few things to look at here. I do have the windows tinted. Always keep it legal, people. So if the state or province you live in, it is legal to tint it, don't tint your windows. But for those of us that can do it, it is a really good idea. Not only for the privacy, like I don't like sitting in a fishbowl when I'm on the highway and there's headlights behind me and stuff like that, but also the fact that it just keeps that interior a lot cooler, and you can't tell me it doesn't look awesome with these black accents. So instead of having chrome around the windows, which we see in a lot of our cars, it is almost like a really, really dark smoked out chrome. And the mirror caps and the bottom sort of tie that together. So we have the entire mirror being blacked out, and it's like a gloss black, as well as the bottom of the side skirt. Now, please don't judge me that this car is a little bit dirty because it was raining earlier, and I drive this car every single day, and I didn't plan well in advance to keep it all shiny for this video. So I know people are gonna mention that, but please excuse me. Also, we have the S-Sport logo here on the quarter panel, which is always a great telltale sign of what package this car is. And it has, even though it's a small car, things like the doors are super, super solid and heavy. And there's not too many competitors in the marketplace that can say that. They sometimes have, you know, in the lower models or the lighter models of the lineup, sometimes you'll see some shortcuts like that when you go to shut a door, and not on the IS. Now, there is a few things on the side profile that I can't really show you on video. It's really hard to do, but I'll describe them to you. So as I'm standing here looking down the side of the car, and again, this is a car that looking at it directly on and looking at it down the side, you get a little bit different angles and you see some more character come to life. One of them is this body line here that's right above the door handles, and it sort of fades away towards the back door handle. But because of that, we see something else start to come to life. And what that is at this rear door handle, the body actually gets a little bit wider. And we see that in, you know, high-end supercars and sport cars where the back ends are always a little bit bigger and just a little bit more character. And on this, we see that little bulge, and it sort of follows through. And if you pay attention, like look at this angle here. So right where the gas cap is, it's almost like a little shelf. L-I-L, Lil shelf, back here towards that rear quarter panel, and that starts to tie in that rear. But before I get to the rear, the tires are a Performance Bridgestone on a 19-inch wheel. I would recommend, if you're gonna drive this in the winter, put some winters on it. Not everybody does, because it is all-wheel drive in Canada. Most of these are all-wheel drive anyway, but definitely do that. And it's like a smoked out, it's almost like the new Hyper Silver. We used to see Hyper Silver on a lot of these cars. This one is now sort of like that gunmetal smoked out gray. So even if you curb them, which thankfully enough, my Harvey's drive-through experiences haven't curbed these ones yet, it is usually pretty easy to get that taken care of. And now onto the back. There's a lot of different angles and lines here. However, the first one that I want to show you, I actually have to turn on, and that is the taillight. So this taillight, when it first came out, was the first taillight to be of this design on the Lexus lineup, and now we're seeing a similar iteration on things like the LX and the RX and the NX. And what it is that sort of samurai sword all the way across from left to right, and in traffic and at nighttime, it really creates a little bit of presence when you're driving behind someone. And the reason I point it out is a lot of times when people are car shopping, they don't get to see the cars with their headlights on. Especially right now in Ontario, it's like sunlight until like 9 o'clock at night. So unless you're car shopping at 9 o'clock at night, you're probably not gonna pay attention to that. But on the IS at nighttime, it looks really, really good. Then we have some more black accents. So this is the spoiler that comes on the F-Sport Series 2. I know on the F-Sport Series 3 for a few years, we had a full carbon, but I'm pretty sure they stopped doing that. I think it was something to do with the materials or the inconsistency, but the factory spoiler is on there very well. I've never seen any defects with like spacing or anything like that. If you do an accessory, which you can get some pretty cool accessory spoilers, they do drill and have some adhesive on. So just make sure your dealership is comfortable doing it. Most Lexus dealerships will be, but do be prepared for perhaps a small flaw, because at the factory, they obviously have a little bit more QC and stuff like that. If the spoiler wasn't there, we would see a really sharp edge shelf, but with it being there, it sort of adds a little bit of decoration to that back end. As we get down a little bit, we see a blacked out, and it's that same piano black rear diffuser. We have dual exhaust setup, and a good friend of mine, Ozzy, has this exact same car in the 3 package and just put on the Lexus accessory exhaust, and it sounds amazing. It's not over the top, like it's not too much drone or anything like that, but it does give a little bit of character, because in the IS, I find I usually hear more of the intake than the exhaust. And doing the accessory exhaust, or there are some pretty sweet aftermarket ones. Joey's, I think I'm saying that right, makes a really good one. NVIDIA makes a really good one. So definitely check those out if you're gonna get one of these and you want to hear that amazing V6. Otherwise, we have a little bit of the diffusers and the trunk space itself. Now, this isn't a huge car, so I don't know what your expectations are. And also, I haven't looked in my trunk before making this video, so I hope there's nothing too embarrassing in here when I open this up. Luckily, not too much, just some Gatorade and some golf balls. But overall, the trunk, it's not powered. There is enough space in here, as you can tell by the golf balls, for a couple sets of golf clubs. The rear seats do fold down 60-40, so not many Lexuses have the fact that you can actually fold down the seats, and this one does, and it doesn't, increase road noise or anything like that, like in some other cars. I could fit in there, but I'm not going to, but there is enough space for me to do so if I had to. Our mission is to hit 100,000 YouTube subscribers so we can put a beautiful plaque on the wall. But that's only doable from viewers like you subscribing and sending our videos to your friends, your neighbors, your grandparents, maybe even your dog, so we can get there. Now back to the video. Okay, so sitting in the IS, now I can tell you a little bit more about my everyday driving experience. So first of all, I want to welcome you to the red interior, which blue on red. A couple years ago, I probably would have been like, I don't know if I love that, but I absolutely do love it. I think in this day and age, having something that's a little bit different and some color in life is really important. For one, when you think about it, when you're driving the car every single day, you're looking out at a road that's gray, and you're looking out at other cars that most of them are white, gray, or black. So when you're sitting in your car, in your peripherals, if I'm even saying that right, I couldn't spell it, but I could say it, in your peripherals, if you see something like color, so that's maybe a beige or a white, or in this case a red, it just adds a little bit of flavor to your eyesight and what you're looking at. And then being able to see the blue accents at the same time is really cool. So that's my 2 cents on the red. Another nice thing about this red, and this has changed over the very recent history of the IS, and that is the fact that the red actually goes up to half the dash. So sort of where my knee is and lower on the dash is the red. Now things like the floor mats and the carpets and stuff like that are all black. Most of the door panel is red, which is cool. The only thing I wish Lexus did would have been red seatbelts. I think that would have been super sweet, but they didn't. That's okay. Maybe next year. Okay, so let's talk about things like the driving position. So if you have read anything online about the IS 300 or 350, people might complain about the so-called hump that is in the driver footwell. It is there, It is not a mythical creature. It does exist. However, for me personally, I don't even notice it. And maybe it's because I have really skinny chicken legs, or the fact that I'm just tall enough that my leg kind of goes over it. Like even right now, I'm trying to find a way that it would bother me, and it doesn't. I mean, maybe if I have cruise control on and I'm taking my foot off the gas and I need somewhere for it to go, yes, if it wasn't there, maybe my foot would go there. But for the most part, I don't notice it at all. In fact, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's kind of comfy to rest on, but I wouldn't recommend that because it would probably kind of interfere with your gas pedal, which we don't want to do. So anyway, seating position otherwise is really, really good. It feels like you're in sort of a sportier car. Now, when my buddy Jamie drives this car, he's a little bit taller than me. And when he has the seat back, he's about 6'5", I think. I noticed that the B pillar is right near his head. So he's kind of like a lean back driver kind of guy. And when he's driving it, if he were to look to his left, the B pillar is right there. However, because of that, when he checks his blind spot, he's looking through the full rear glass, which is kind of nice, I guess. And he didn't really complain. He loved the car. So I feel like if I would have heard that complaint more often, it would mean that it bothers people, and I haven't heard it, but it was just something to note. That's a bit about the seating position itself. The seats are very comfortable. These are the sport seats. There is a couple extra, I call them panels, to the seats themselves, being that they're the sport seats. So a little bit extra, instead of just bolsters that are like super angular, there is almost like a medium bolster that's sort of transitioning from the cushion into those bolsters. And it holds you in place quite well. They are heated and cooled, and there is buttons here to do so. I don't know if there's an automatic setting. I think I always just leave them cranked. For me, I'm like a 3 or nothing type guy when it comes to heated and cooled seats. And we have a heated steering wheel as well right beside that button. In the center console, we do have the Lexus remote touch interface. So as many of you have known, most of our Lexuses have gone away from this interface, but the IS still has it. However, it's combined with the touch. So we can actually just touch the screen and go quickly to different features and settings and stuff like that, or we can use the mouse. And honestly, it's kind of nice to have the option, where sometimes I would just use the mouse because I don't want to touch the screen, and sometimes I want to touch the screen because maybe I'm the passenger, or it's just easier just like click and not think. So it is kind of nice having both. It takes up a little bit of real estate here, but not enough for me to complain about. There is something to complain about though. I usually don't know where to put my phone. The cup holders have this little gap between them, so my phone usually ends up there, or in my suit pocket, or occasionally in the armrest itself. But when it's here, I notice if I take a turn, I can hear it sort of clicking between the two sides because it's not like a really solid spot, where something like the ES350 has like a little holder for it. So I would like to see that maybe reconfigured if they do get rid of the touch interface. The shifter itself is the classic shifter. It's the gated one. People are gonna hate me in the comments for that. It is the gated one. It's not a manual gated transmission, but it does have the little notches, where the new ones is like the electronic one. That's what I mean by that. We have different drive modes, so eco, normal, and sport. I like where that's positioned because when I'm driving, I can just reach that without even looking. So that's really nice. You don't have to think about it. The snow mode sort of just tailors that throttle response to be a bit softer and a bit less like abrupt, I guess you could say. We have the brake hold button, which shout out to the person in the comments that told me I should talk about that, because you're right, that is a sweet feature. So if you don't know brake hold, if you're in the drive-thru getting your Starbucks and the guy in front of you isn't moving or the girl in front of you isn't moving, you could hit brake hold, let go of that brake, rest your leg a little bit, and then when it is time to move, you just hit the gas pedal and the car will go. So it's like putting it in park, but not putting it in park. Then we have traction control off, which you're never gonna touch probably, unless you're stuck in the snow. Or you're at the track, maybe. The one thing that this is missing is in the F Sport Series 3, we have Sport Plus, because that has the adjustable suspension. And I will say, in my experience with this car, there's a specific on-ramp I take that I always punch it a little bit. Like I like to accelerate through this full circle legally that I go through, and there's a little bump halfway through that circle. And I noticed with this one, in the fact that it doesn't have the Sport Plus, I notice I'm a bit softer through that corner. So having Sport Plus, it's gonna tighten things up, a little bit less bounce and a little bit less, don't know the technical term, other than bounce, a little bit less movement there, up and down, and it would just feel a little more planted. But other than that, the car does feel very planted. From there, we do have just a little armrest here. I do have my tanning glasses. Don't judge me. I live in Canada and I work in an office, so sometimes I go tanning. And I do have my phone cord because, yes, it's no secret, there is no wireless Apple CarPlay. But there is CarPlay, and if you plug in your phone, it works every single time without any type of issues. So you can use that, or today on my way into work, I didn't want to plug in my phone. I just use the classic Bluetooth connection. So it's kind of nice to have both, I guess. Another cool feature that I love, and I use it every day, is the climate control is this little slidey thing. I always called it the slide. And this isn't in any car except for the IS and the RC, but it is really cool. That's how you set your temperature. You just slide your finger up and down here and it sets it. There also still is a CD player, which is wild to me, but for those of you that still got some CDs kicking around, some mixtapes, you know, summer 2012, you could slap that in there and it still works. Above that, we have the Lexus clock. It's a modern take on the Lexus clock. I really like it. It's got a nice ambience to it. There's not a ton of ambient lighting in here at nighttime, I notice. So the fact that this is there is kind of nice. And then obviously the screen above it. Little secret, the start stop button, when you're about to start the car and you have your foot on the brake, you'll see the light go ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. And that's supposed to mimic a heartbeat because the experience you're about to receive is gonna fasten your heart rate. I think that's what Lexus was trying to go for. Okay, let's talk about the gauge cluster. So we have the LFA inspired gauge cluster. I love it. I usually just keep it in the middle and have like the big circle sort of showing the tachometer and the speed and things like that. But occasionally I'll move it over and check things out like my range or my fuel economy, or for those really fun track days, my G-force meter. And no, whoever buys this car, I've never taken it to the track. But I do think that if I owned it, I probably would. And then it shows you gear position, tire pressure, things like that. But like I said, I usually mechanically move that over, and it's a cool party trick. Anytime I'm showcasing one of my friends' car, I do that feature just to show like, oh, look at that mechanical LFA-inspired gauge cluster that moves over. We have some paddle shifters, and we have some other arrows on the steering wheel itself. I usually just make sure my lane departure's on and my cruise control radar is set to like 1 instead of the 4 that it sets to. Other than that, I don't use these a ton. I don't even use them really for like answering and hanging up calls. I don't know why. Usually when I see a call coming in, I'm haphazardly just pressing the button there. So I do forget that it's on the side. And the fact that the radio has a volume knob, I don't even use the volume up and down that much, to be honest. I just use the volume knob. Everything else you're just gonna set. The rain sensing wipers are just gonna be set. There is a secret button to the left that I wanna talk about, and that is great in the winter when you wanna heat up those wipers to get rid of streaks from the ice. You guys in the northern states and all of Canada would know what I'm talking about, where the ice sort of stays underneath that wiper and it doesn't make a clean connection. You can melt that with a little button. All Lexuses have it pretty much, but usually you have to go through like 5 layers of menu options to get to it. We're on the IS, quick button and you're there. And we also have the ASC dial here, which is active sound control. Yes, it is sound being piped into the cabin through the speakers, but it is kind of nice to have that cranked and you can hear a little bit of that intake engine. If I had an exhaust on this, I'd probably turn that way down and just listen to the exhaust. Other than that, my experience, again, I'm 6'1", I fit in this car very, very well. I find the layout to be decently, tailored to people of any size. But the only thing is getting in and out of it, if you're maybe taller and heavier, you might find it a little hard on your knees just because it is a lower to the ground car. It's not as high as an NX or an RX. So that would be really my only complaint or thing to be wary of when getting after one of these cars. There's a lot to say about this car. Make sure you comment below. I try to read every comment myself and sometimes even reply back, and I'm curious to see what you think. Okay, so sitting in the backseat of the IS350, which I don't do very often, but I have occasionally sat back here. It's gonna look like that front seat is touching my legs, and it kind of is, but most of that is because I have the easy exit on. So when I shut off the car, that seat moves back and the steering wheel moves up. However, it is touching my knees a little bit. This car isn't really designed to be a 4-door saloon that you're gonna drive people around in. It's like a coupe that you can still bring your friends with, I guess. That's how you should look at it. But being 6'1", my head is touching the ceiling just a little bit, and my knees a little bit there. Posture-wise, I don't feel like I'm straight up and down, but I also don't feel like I'm really super reclined. I don't think I can nap back here, is what I'm saying. And if there was another person back here with me, we have enough room between us. However, if there was a third passenger, this hump for where the drive shaft is would definitely be in their way. So you'd be sharing an extra leg on each side. But in a pinch, coming home from a restaurant, it's not gonna be the end of the world. I just wouldn't drive from Canada to Florida like this. We do have some cup holders here in the center armrest. It's not a pass-through because these seats fold down pretty flat, 60-40 as I mentioned. We got a couple lights here. So we have the dome light as well as a couple map lights. Those are triggered by just a couple buttons up there. The leather is still perforated and we have some seat anchors for child seats. So there's one on each side. And we do have a couple vents here. So the back seat is not totally neglected. There's not a ton of amenities, there's not a ton of space, but in a pinch, you're out with your friends, you can drive them home in the back seat and have no problems. Okay, so let's talk about driving experience. So under the hood, we have the 3.5 liter V6 that Lexus has used for many, many years. This one is the 300 horsepower that takes premium gas. And this is mated to a 6-speed transmission, and the two of them together create, it's interesting because years ago, I wouldn't have necessarily painted this with like a unique powertrain and a unique, engine and transmission setup. But in 2024, it sort of is because everything is going 4-cylinder, 8-speed, 10-speed, things like that. And this still holds on to that classic sort of platform of a driver's car. And you do really feel that driving it every single day. It has great get up and go. The handling is very on point, even though this one doesn't have that Sport Plus mode. It's still very agile and sort of like makes you want to take that long way home with the windy road and stuff like that. However, it's still smooth enough where, if you're on a highway, a couple hour drive through Toronto, you don't feel uncomfortable by any means. So that leads me to, Dustin, what is those few things that buyers should look out for or should know about this car that it might not tell you in the brochure? Number one is it does go through tires quickly because the camber that the vehicle has allows for that best of both worlds handling as well as smooth ride. And because of that, tires only last about 30,000 K usually, I think, depending on how drivers sort of treat their cars. And you can't really tell at first. You have to turn the wheel all the way to lock and really see that inside tire edge. So from the outside, it looks like you're gonna have lots of tread, but your dealership's gonna tell you it's time for tires. You're gonna be like, you guys aren't telling the truth. No, they probably are. It's probably just the inside wall that you can't see unless you crank that wheel or put it up on a hoist. There is someone in the comments that told me there is a kit you can get to eliminate that. It's aftermarket. You are definitely changing the suspension and steering setup. However, it is true. I have heard people do that and had still a great experience and make their tires last longer because you can't rotate your tires either. So that's very interesting. It's a staggered tire setup. So it's wider at the back than the front. And because of that, you can't rotate them that way anyway. So that's number one. Number two is for being such a small car, it's not that great on gas. But that's okay, because a guy like me, I'd rather have miles per gallon than miles per gallon on a car like this. And if you're looking for a fuel-efficient sedan, there is many other options, even like the ES350, which is better on gas than this, or the ES300H, or something like the NX Hybrid or the UX Hybrid. There's tons of options if you're looking for fuel economy. This is not one of them, and if you ask me, that's totally okay. And that's pretty much it. Everything else about this car is super fun to drive, super smooth. There's really good fit and finish. It's still made in Japan, so the build quality is exceptional. You get it in an ultrasonic blue like this with red interior. It looks phenomenal. You're gonna love it, and you should probably get one before this era comes to an end, which I'm sure we're just on the brink of. So that's it. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. This car is gonna be for sale soon if you want it. And other than that, I'll see you in the next video. Today, I'm gonna give you a used car buyer guide on the Lexus IS and all of the variants in regards to it. I'll go over a few things like some tips and tricks and some things to look out for and be wary of when looking and shopping for a pre-owned Lexus IS. But before I get into it, make sure you hit like and subscribe for more Lexus related content. Okay, so the Lexus IS remained pretty unchanged from like 2014 almost all the way up until 2021 with just some minor changes, but some of them are very important. But let's look at the car overall. So this is an IS 300, which has the 3.5 liter V6 and in Canada came mostly all-wheel drive. It did have a little brother, little sibling, called the IS250 for a number of years, but in my opinion, the IS250, even though it had less horsepower, a lot less horsepower, didn't really offer any fuel savings and felt a little bit sluggish. So the IS300 was born, and the IS300 felt like a big upgrade from the 250, but it made the IS350 a little bit less of a jump up, where when it was just 250 and 350, it was a big jump in horsepower. I think it was like a 100 horsepower jump. But they really narrowed that gap when the 300 came out. When looking at 300s, I would definitely recommend the F-Sport. So the one beside me is an F-Sport series in the obsidian pink color. You can tell it's an F-Sport series. One, the very obvious F-Sport spindle grille. And back in 2017, when this car came out, that spindle grille seemed very large and in charge, and unlike any of the other ISs. But now, in 2024, it's not as, I guess it just fits in more with what we're seeing on the road and makes it look a little bit more modern, and that's why I always go for it. Plus, on the premium and luxury packages, it makes that front end have like a little bit of a section in the middle that it just sort of breaks up the grille, and I just like that really aggressive grille. I know some people hate when I use the word aggressive, but I do think that that's what it looks like. So when looking at those couple packages, the F-Sport obviously adds things like the grille, the smoked out chrome around it, and also the really nice interior, which I'll get into in a second. However, if you want something that's a little more subdued, going for like a premium or a luxury in those years, you could probably save some money in the used car market and not have that, you know, sporty styling, I guess that you could say. However, always make sure, as I always say when it comes to pre-owned cars, the more features you can get in the car, the better resale value you'll have later down the road. And when in this body style, even though the car looked relatively the same for many, many years, even a difference between 2016 and 2017 could make a big difference. And yes, in 17, we saw like a little sneaky refresh. I don't think Lexus called it a refresh, but we saw a little bit changes to the front bumper and sort of the arrow that's on the front bumper, as well as the taillights and things like that. They did get rid of the little washer that was here. I can't remember if it was here or here. I think it was over here somewhere. Maybe it was right there. I know my friend's Trina's car has it. And what it did was it like sort of shot the fluid up at the headlights, and for whatever reason in 2017 they're like, no, we don't need that. So it's always a telltale. But more importantly, in 2017 they added Lexus Safety Sense Standard, which means radar cruise control, pre-collision system, lane departure alert, and auto high beam. The radar cruise control and the pre-collision system are huge because those to me are like safety things. They're accident avoidance systems, and Lexus making them standard meant that it was just, again, a little bit more future-proof in the pre-owned market, where if you're looking at a 2016, even if it's got lower mileage, it's probably not gonna have those features, or if it does, it's not gonna have them standard, in Canada, at least. Another thing not a lot of people know about the Lexus IS, it has a very smooth ride, and it's still sporty handling without sacrificing each other. However, there is a little bit of a sacrifice, and not everybody realizes it. So the tires that come on any IS, whether it's a 300, 350, or even the 200 and 250, on the outside, so like pretty much the half to the outside, doesn't get a lot of wear. Most of the wear comes from that inner side, so like you actually have to turn the wheel and reach your hand in. The reason I bring this up is if you're looking at a pre-owned IS, 300, 350, whatever, if the wheels are straight and you're checking the tire, like everybody does a little fingernail test. I do it all the time, even when I'm appraising cars. If you measure from the outside wall, or like the outside half of the tire, all of them are gonna have a lot of meat there. However, if you reach on the inside, more likely that's where that wear is happening. And the reason I say that is because it has a camber angle to be able to achieve that smooth ride, yet amazing handling and not sacrifice one another, is, you know, having those wheels tilted upward a little bit, meaning that inside wall is getting all the wear. So if you're looking at a pre-owned one, make sure you don't just check that outside wall, you reach in and check the inside. And even after you own your IS, and don't get me wrong, it's one of the most reliable powertrain setups we have. Almost nothing ever goes wrong with these ISs, except they do go through tires a lot quicker than something like an RX. And I mean like a lot quicker. Like sometimes an RX 350 will get 60,000 kilometers to a set of tires before you even have to really start thinking about it, where one of these ISs, you might be doing it at like 30,000 kilometers. I don't know what that is in miles, so my American friends will have to do some calculations and let me know in the comments. But I did want to bring that up because not a lot of people know about it, and I want everybody to be well read on the subject. Also, another thing to think about is in this year, in 2017, the black paint was Obsidian. I love the color Obsidian because it's like that gloss black. However, and I'm a black car guy, so no judgment here, it really does show the scratches a little bit more than, Caviar, or I think the other one's called Starlight Mica. And those two colors, the Starlight Mica and the Caviar, have a lot of metallic in it. So black paint does show scratches and dirt a little bit, but the metallic sort of hides it and gives it a little bit of depth. This one being just that gloss black, we do see a lot of swirls and some water spots and stuff like that on this car. We didn't like buff this car or anything, but I'm okay with that when shopping for a pre-owned car or looking at a trade in one of these, because the paint on any Lexus is so soft. You can usually bring it back with maybe a 3-stage or a 5-stage wet sand, buff, polish, wax, clay bar at the beginning. Because it seems to be like the clear coat is almost like double. Like there's like 2 layers of clear coat. In fact, I remember speaking to a Lexus engineer a number of years ago about a rumor that I heard that Lexuses have self-healing paint. And it's true. I mean, it's only really good for like 10 years. And what it is that outer layer of clear coat is so soft that if it sits in the sun long enough, it sort of will heal a little bit of those light scratches and light sort of swirl marks. But this one being a little bit older, we can't just rely on the sun. We're gonna have to buff and polish it. And I promise you, a lot of that will go away as long as it's not too deep. In fact, my LS, when I got it, is the Caviar, but when I got it, it had a ton of those swirls. And a good buddy of mine spent a couple hours buffing, polishing, and all that stuff, and now we have that depth color. And that was a couple years ago, and it still looks great. And while we're at the side profile, I will point out the F-Sport wheel. So this is the F-Sport spoke wheel. It is kind of like a dark hyper silver, I guess you could say. So you want to make sure that no one has used any super aggressive acid. And how you'll be able to tell that is you'll usually see some clouding and some shadowing that won't come off with cleaning it. A good rule of thumb is when you're checking out one of these cars, if the wheels are important to you, you could always just run a finger over it, and obviously your finger's gonna get dirty and it's gonna have some brake dust and stuff on it, but just to look to see if that painted wheel has any, clouding or any, particles in it or stuff like that. With this wheel setup, I will say people do curb them a lot. That just happens. I have a guy that comes to the dealership about once a week to repair a bunch of our wheels because, it's just something that always happens. You can't avoid it. It's gonna break your heart the first time it happens. I promise you it's not the end of the world, but it's still something to mention. As we get to the rear of the IS, you will start to see things like the taillights change. So as I mentioned, the 2017 has a different taillight setup than the 16 and before, and that taillight does sort of freshen things up a little bit because this is a similar design to what we see even today. Well, I guess it's kind of finally starting to be phased out, but a lot of our cars still have sort of this stacked Lexus, I don't know what you call it, Lexus signature taillight, very similar to, some iterations like we saw even in stuff like the LC or the GS when it was around, or the new ES or anything like that. And that highlights a little bit of body blemishes, or I call it character, that this car has, because there really is a difference between a new car buyer and a used car buyer. I find a new car buyer really does want perfection or prefers perfection. However, a used car buyer sometimes is okay with the car having a little bit of character and maybe having to put a little bit of money into it to make it perfect. And this rear bumper is a perfect example. It does have, a little bit of a crease going up here. And to repair it, it's not gonna be super scary. There's a few options you have. You could replace the bumper skin, and I'm just gonna spitball here. Maybe that'll cost, somewhere like $400 for the skin and then paint and then install. So maybe you'd be around $900 to $1,000 Canadian to get this whole rear sort of fixed up. Or sometimes if it's just paint, you could do just a little blend or blow-in, as they call it at the body shop. And that can just run you a couple $100, and what they'll do is they'll just make this area look good like the rest of it. And I even had a friend that he only liked used cars that had, you know, a little bit of something cosmetic because it helped him justify the price, especially being a luxury vehicle. And this one in particular, being a higher package with low mileage and still being priced in like the high 20s, like 28.9 or something like that. We are of course gonna see a few of those blemishes, but someone could really bring it back to life without having to put too much money or effort into it. Okay, a little bit more about the front end and when shopping for a pre-owned one, what to look for. One of them is the chrome around the grille can get a little discolored. I even see this one has a little bit of a crack in it. Sometimes it's hard to clean that off. You can replace that for not very much money, or I've even seen people wrap it in another chrome, just put another layer of chrome on top of it. A good friend of mine, Bilal, has taught me that a lot of times on used cars, he'll just get the front bumper redone. He'll pay that $400 to $700 because like bumpers get pitted and they're like the first portion of your car to be trajectorying through the air and the dust and the sand and the snow. So a lot of times just getting a new front bumper or getting it refinished can really brighten up a car. In the older IS like this one, we still have that really nice Lexus signature daytime running light. We have bi-LED headlights, so low beam and high beam are both really, really good at night. And sometimes the pre-owned one, you'll even see this one here, for instance, has PPF already on the hood. So a protective film from here about 20 inches up or something like that. Under the hood, there's not a ton to really worry about on these ISs. You'll see things like some surface rust around the struts, perhaps. That doesn't scare me too much. This one has it on both sides. You always want to check the battery to make sure acid or any corrosion didn't really get amplified in that area. And then obviously just do a quick look to make sure there's no fluids that are obviously sitting anywhere because of the shape of the engine. If one of those gaskets were to be leaking or sweating, you would probably see evidence of it from the sides because the plastic panel only covers the top. So it's not the end of the world. You should be able to see under there. Which brings me to the point of Lexus certified pre-owned. A lot of times people think that that's just a marketing scheme or tactic, but it's really not, because dealerships actually have to pay a lot more money to even have the car ready for Lexus certified pre-owned. So even though Performance Lexus isn't a huge dealership, a lot of time percentage-wise, we have some of the most Lexus certified pre-owned cars. And that's because not every dealer subscribes to it or does it for every car. And what you get for that is a way more inspected, I don't know if that's the right way to say that, a way better inspected or more in-depth inspected car than just your regular safety. For instance, a regular safety in Ontario, you only have to have 3 millimeters on the tires to be able to pass, but on a certified pre-owned, it's like 5 or 6, like it's way more, it's almost double. And everything, that goes for everything, even how it's maintained. A car can only pass like certified pre-owned if it's up to date with all the services. And I don't mean just oil changes, I mean like a service 1, a service 2, a service 3 at the 80,000 kilometer mark. So things like even transmission fluid and axle, checking the axles and stuff like that all come into play. A fly just landed on me while I said that. But there's also other benefits to it, like you can get subvented interest rates from Lexus for finding a car that's like that. So if you're more of that, like I need a nicer certified pre-owned or a nicer used car than just actually saving money, you will pay a little bit more for the certified pre-owned, but mechanically and sort of like the history of the car will be a little bit safer of a bet. Okay, so sitting in the IS300 F Sport, we start to see a few more of those higher end features start to play into effect here that you wouldn't be able to see from the outside. But before I get into that, I just want to say everything has held up very well. Not like the exterior on this one had a few character lines and blemishes that again we could take care of, but the inside is a pretty different story. I mean, other than a little bit of shininess on the leather steering wheel, the perforation and the F Sport wheel itself has held up really well. I don't see anything at all in the seats that are indicating the age of this car. It is the Rioja red seats, and in some of the newer models, they change it to circuit red and then back to Rioja red. It flip-flops all the time. The Rioja red is like that dark wine red. And it's pretty much just the seat materials and a little bit of the door panels On these ones, the carpets and the dash panels are all just black. However, I'm driving a new 2024 IS, and it has red that's like everywhere. Like the center's red, the bottom of the dash is red, where this one's a little bit more subtle. So if you're not a red car interior person, the rear red still might work for you. Okay, so when I mentioned the features, so on the 2017, we see some upgrades, like a little bit wider of a screen that's a little bit higher definition. We also see the newer, I say newer like it's newer, it's not newer, but an updated version of the remote touch interface. And what I mean by that is this one actually has buttons on the sides to hit enter, and the actual system itself just seems to work a little bit smoother, I would say. You can do the split screen where you have your navigation on one side and your music on the other, and all that works really, really well. It's not cloud-based, it's built right in. You can do updates, but most people don't do the updates, and I wouldn't worry about the updates too much anyway. Then we have one of the coolest climate controls in the Lexus lineup, and that's these slider climate controls. So you can just hit auto and then slide up and down to adjust the temperature. Definitely, if you're looking at a pre-owned one of these, make sure that that works. I have seen it one time, it was years ago, where when I went up and down on my finger, it didn't work at all. Like the sensor didn't work, it didn't pick up my finger, and it was pretty expensive to fix. But other than that, they've been really, really solid. It has like the brushed metal, or brushed wood look, I guess you could say, here, which again feels very updated. We have that Lexus clock, the modern version of the Lexus clock, which is starting to be phased out, but I still like it, and it looks really classy there. It's kind of surrounded in chrome, and it lights up. In terms of the MSD display, no, the multi-info display, the MID display, it does have, most of these ISs, any of the sports for sure, has the LFA display. So what that means is when you press one little button on the steering wheel, mechanically, the gauge cluster actually moves over and you could hear it. And I think Lexus purposely did it that you can hear it. I've never seen one of those have any issues, but you could just try it to make sure your car has it. The luxury and premium packages of this wouldn't have that digital screen there. It would be a little digital screen with more like the needle, like the analog speedometer part. But in there is where we're gonna be able to access things like lane departure alert, pre-collision system, the radar cruise control shows up on that screen when you activate it, and same with the lane departure alert. And those buttons are right here. And actually, that's a really good telltale if your car has the Lexus safety system for these years, is that just look for the radar cruise button and the lane departure button on the bottom of your right hand steering wheel, right there. Certain years just has the manual up and down, and that's okay. I mean, it is what it is. I think they even added it and then took it away one year. Not the end of the world. It doesn't mean your car's a base car or anything like that. It just means that you have to manually adjust that, which is not the end of the world. We always have blind spot monitoring on certain packages in these years, and a cool little button on the left, which is your heated wiper deicer. So on some Lexuses, you have to go through like a million screens to turn that feature on, and us Canadians and Northern Americans, I'm sure, appreciate just being able to click a button and having some of those icy streaks get evaporated in. Other than that, that's pretty much just a quick tour. We have a couple different drive modes here, Eco, Normal, and Sport. On the fully loaded IS 350s, you'll see a Sport Plus, which just means it has the adaptive or adjustable suspension where it really tightens things up. It uses a different valve in the suspension and it makes it so it's tighter. It's not like the air rides where you have to be worried of that extra feature and anything wearing out. It doesn't really cause any issues or anything like that. And we have a little snow mode there as well. Even if when I got in this interior, if I saw things like a little tear in maybe the leather here, or maybe one of the seats having a little tear in it, or the dashboard, I wouldn't be too worried about it because, again, working at a dealership, I've learned that there's a lot of vendors out there and a lot of specialists that'll come and glue that little piece or dye that little bit of dashboard, and it's not super expensive. And if it's something that's gonna bug you when you sit on it every day, then it might be worth the extra money. What you can look is make sure things like your cooled seat works, because sometimes cooled seats can be a little tricky if they stop working, or if someone spilled something and like the perforation is clogged, then you gotta like poke it all with a Q-tip. So that would be something that I would check, is make sure all of the electronic features work, at least. Okay, so sitting in the back of the IS, you're not gonna notice a big difference between some of the different years and different packages. It's pretty plain Jane back here. However, I did notice on this one, and I didn't really look in the backseat before filming today, it almost looks like it's never been sat in. I mean, sometimes ones that have had car seats back here, which it does have the anchors for car seats, you'll see little indentations on the leather, and those can be a little bit tricky to get out. This one, it legit looks like no one ever sat back here, which is pretty awesome to see. That's kind of like how I keep my cars, is like I don't really have tons of people in and out of the backs too often. I did notice, this being the F-Sport model, you also get a blacked out headliner, and all the other ones have like a beige or like a grayish headliner, so you always want to make sure you don't see any like grease stains and stuff. This one, I see a couple scuffs, but they're kind of just going away as I touch them with my finger. So not a big deal there, but I did want to at least mention that you get a different headliner in those F-Sport packages. And I swear, I'm not being like commissioned on selling F-Sport packages. I just really like it. It's my favorite one. So while I'm back here, in the trunk, you want to just make sure it has the full-size spare under that fake floor, which all of these ISs do. It sort of just sits underneath this floor. So all I would really do is check it. And it is really great if they still have the books. These are super expensive to have to order again if you really like having physical books. However, you can get them online as a PDF for free for pretty much any of your Lexus at any given time. And there you have it, a little bit of a used car buyer guide on the famous Lexus IS. And I have a little bit of advice for those of you trying to sell your Lexus IS. I mean, one is you can give me a call and maybe I'll buy it for the dealership. But two, some of those things that I mentioned cosmetically can go a long way with this car, because most of the buyers know that it's very reliable, it's a solid powertrain. Lexus is known for reliability. However, just showing a little bit of how well it was cared for. Things like getting that front bumper redone, getting that rear bumper redone, spending a little bit of that money can go a long way cosmetically to make it look just that much nicer to the next buyer. And to those buyers out there, even if it doesn't have that, it's not the end of the world, because we all know that it can be done pretty easily. And just remember, even the newest version of this car isn't that much different, other than a little bit more tech, a few more horses under the hood. But overall, it's still pretty much the same car that everybody knows and loves, because Lexus thought, if it's not broke, don't fix it. Anyway, I'm Justin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments below. If I should do more used car buyer guides. I know I haven't done as many in the last few months, but I've been getting phone calls about my old ones, so I thought I'd do them again, and let me know which cars you think I should do them on. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.